you know, like when you, I don't remember when you were a kid and your mom told you don't talk to strangers, and you know, so you probably were a good kid and you didn't talk to strangers. Well, you got to forget what your mom told you. You've got to talk to as many strangers as you can. Like you really have to be as sociable as possible, because you want everybody to know that you're in real estate. The sky's the limit, you know. When I started as a national trainer for Century 21, one of the things that that we would always teach is that you should go through a box of 1,000 business cards every 3 months. And if you're not giving out 1,000 business cards, then you're not networking enough. And like, I mean, no joke. Now, I don't know if the numbers are still the same anymore. I don't know why they wouldn't be the same, but the most effective way to get business is to face. You know, mailing things is very ineffective. You know, electronic media is not, I don't know, call me crazy, but I feel like when you have face-to-face with people, or definitely at least talking to people over the phone, your chances of closing the sale or making progress as far as getting business from them jumps exponentially. And if you're a shy person, you just got to get past it. One thing that people do in order to get more comfortable as far as being comfortable talking to people is they join this thing called Toastmasters. It's you probably heard of it. You could Google it for more information. There's chapters all over the country, and Toastmasters helps you get more comfortable speaking in front of small groups and then bigger groups, and it just helps you get out of your shell. And that's one thing that real estate can really do for you. It'll help you get out of your shell, and it's a good thing, you know. Like, real estate took me places that I never imagined before. And you know, you might think that you know what you're going to do in real estate, but I've got a newsflash for you. It could absolutely take you on a route that you have not even imagined before. So, you know, enjoy the ride, go for the ride, and go for it. You know, we only know that we get one chance at life, and why not make the most of it? You ready for review? I'm ready for review. Here we go. If you know the answer, type the answer, and then I'll be excited. Okay? So kind of like trigger word format. I'm going to say a few words, and you tell me if you know the answer to the question. So if you're in a building that has condos and co-ops, if you're in a building that has condos and co-ops, what is the term that I'm looking for? If you're in a building that has condos and co-ops, what term represents a building that have both things in it? Yes, that is correct. Gino, good job. Francesca, good job. That is correct. Next, here's the next question. When you hear the phrase potential change in income and expenses, what term am I looking for? Again, when you hear potential change in income and expenses, what term am I looking for? Pro forma statement is correct. Pro forma statement, yes. Depreciation period for commercial property that you should have memorized. Stephanie, you are correct. 39 years. 39 years is what we're looking for. That's 39 years is the depreciation period for commercial property. Okay? Next question. If you go to the local Board of Assessment review, again, if you go to the local Board of Assessment review and you don't get the reduction that you want, what do we call the next phase? Correct, SCAR. SCAR is a correct answer. SCAR stands for the Small Claims Assessment Review. Good job. Next question. When you hear OPM, you should be thinking of what term? OPM is other people's money. Yes, that is correct, Francesca. Yes, leverage is correct. It's one of the only things that we can do in real estate. It's one of the only things in the world that you can leverage with such little down. The fact that you can put as little as 3 to 5% down and have a major controlling interest in the property is incredible. You know, it's like there's not too many things in the world that you can control the entire thing with 3 to 5% down. Okay. What do we call the smallest amount of retail space and the largest amount of retail space? I said, make sure you know these terms. Yes, Stephanie, strip is the smallest. And then what do we call the largest? Mega is correct. Mega is correct. Next question. We mentioned that you need to know a number of insurance terms. Which code refers to condominiums? Condominiums. What is the insurance code that you should have memorized for condominiums? So your answer should only have 3 characters in it. I'll give you, yes, good job. H06, condos is correct. Good job, Gino. Okay, so here's a bonus question. Which one do we use for renters? Yes, Francesca, H04 is correct. H04 is correct. Next question. What do we call a temporary insurance policy? Temporary insurance policy. What's the term you should know? This shows up on the state exam quite a bit. And that's all you need to know. You put that on one side of your flashcard, temporary insurance policy, and on the reverse side, you put the binder. Shayna, good answer. Binder is what we're looking for. That is correct. Good job. All right, that's actually all I wanted to review for tonight. We've been doing so much review with you. Page 209 is chapter 10. This is the final chapter of your book. Yep, 209. So property management. So we talk about property management. Well, it's in the state curriculum. That's why we talk about it. And so we're talking about all of this because there's people who literally they take this course just because they want to become property managers. So if you're working for someone as a property manager, first of all, you have to work for a broker. You can't have a real estate license and be a property manager where you're collecting commissions. I'm sorry, where you're collecting rents. Where you're collecting rents on the behalf of someone else, you can't do that without a broker's license. So you have to work under a broker to be able to do that as a property manager. All right, so I'm going to continue. So we're on page 209, property management. We're going to look at the term fiduciary. Fiduciary is the third paragraph on page 209. Fiduciary is the highest relationship we have by law. When a person hires a property manager to represent them as their property manager, that's the highest relationship we have by law. You're supposed to put that person's interest above and beyond everyone else's, including your own. And that's what we talk about in that section of the book, okay? And that's all defined right there. We have disclosure requirements that apply in property management. The disclosure requirements mirror exactly what we talk about when we talk to a buyer. So in property management, we have a tenant, and the equivalent in real estate is a buyer. For property management, we have a landlord, and for real estate, we have a seller. So everything mirrors. So when you look at the disclosure forms for each, they just change the words out, but everything else is the same. So when you read through the middle there, please don't forget, that's a nice thing about, I put the property management chapter at the end of the book, primarily because it's kind of a review for chapter 2, for big parts of chapter 2, because of agency concepts, okay? So vacant land is excluded from the requirement to have a written agency disclosure. You should know that for test purposes. Whether we're in property management or we're at the beginning of the course, that's excluded. Buildings that have 5 or more units, because they're usually considered commercial, so they're also excluded. At the bottom of the page, we talk about landlord's agent and what you're going to do. You're going to make sure there's reasonable care, undivided loyalty, confidentiality. In other words, the CC load that we have with a seller, this is the CC load that we have with a landlord's agent, as a landlord's agent. When we look at page 210, we continue more about agency, then we get into dual agency as well. And then in the middle of 210, we talk about the role of the property manager. So you collect rent as a property manager. We negotiate, we say expert negotiation, budget preparation, marketing the investment property, property maintenance. And property maintenance isn't just getting the best price. It's also making sure that the people are reputable, that you check them out thoroughly, because you have to remember that unless you're dealing with your own properties, and a lot of people use this information that they get from the course so that they become better property managers of their own properties. But when we're talking about being a property manager for someone else, you're always worried about substantiating that you're doing things properly and in the best interest of the person you have a fiduciary relationship with, which is the owner, the owner of the property. So it's really important that if you're negotiating to get the best price, that you're also verifying that, all right, well, I made sure that I verified that this is a legitimate company to work with. They've been around X number of years. I got, after I did all the thing with estimates, I also verified, I verified with people who've used their services that, yes, they had good things to say about them. So, because what happens is if something goes wrong, it's going to come back on you. Like, well, why didn't you check them out more carefully? So you always want to think about, if something goes wrong, did I cover myself well? Really, really important when you're working on behalf of someone else. We talk about types of agencies at the bottom half of the page. Of course, I'm sure you'll never forget, but if you're new, you didn't even hear this for the first time. We've got some people that just joined the class a couple 3 nights ago. So you don't even know that the type of agency relationship that property managers often have is general agents, that we consider them a general agent. You didn't even know that real estate agents are considered special agents. But everyone else that's been here for a long time, they learned that a long time ago, and now you're going to learn about it again when we loop again through the program. You'll learn that in the next 3 classes that we have. That's addressed at the bottom half of page 210. The second paragraph from the bottom of 210, we talk about what a universal agent is. And of course, that's the most broad type of agency that we have in real estate. But it's actually the most broad type of agency we have in law in general. It's the most delegatable sort of relationship you can have, where you can delegate the most. Of anything you can delegate, the most is in a universal agency. The bottom of 210 and top of 211, we talk about the formal management agreement. And the formal management agreement, this is so important. Like, folks, if you just let me know on the chat if any of you think you're going to get involved with property management. I'm just curious if any of you think you will get involved, or you are involved, or you were involved. Just let me know. Just let me know. I just want to, remember I told you this is all active participation. So I just want to make sure that we have 14 people now that are participating. Just let me know. So what I want to tell you about the formal management agreement is that's your roadmap. Like, that sets the scope for what you're allowed to do, what the owner will allow you to do. It's huge. We're not talking about like a half-page form here. We're talking about a multiple-page agreement. It's usually no less than 2 pages, but it can be 4 to 6 pages, depending on the complexities of the properties that you're managing and the finesse of the client that you're dealing with. If you've never filled one out before, you want to make sure that there's not liability issues in there, that you don't want to get caught with your pants down on this. That it's huge. These are huge. So, but it outlines your responsibilities, and if you don't understand everything that's in there, you can get sued and you can lose a lot. especially in terms of when you have to go to court and fight. And most of the time it's spelled out, but if you don't read it because it's all the fine print and you're not one of the people that reads things, it's not a pretty situation. As we continue, we look at collection of rent as the second item on page 211. So collecting rents is pretty straightforward. Give that a read through. Usually there's not too much that's testable on this. Expert negotiation is, a lot of this is common sense, so I'd give that a cursory review. I think there's some good advice there. You know, I've owned a bunch of property over the years. I have liquidated a number of properties that I've had just because, you know, property values had jumped a lot. I've done a lot of renovations over the years, and you know, you kind of get to a point to where you just, you know, it just feels right to do it. You know, but I'll tell you one thing that's nice about real estate is that, you know, you don't, you know, we don't have a union in real estate. You don't have job security per se. Crazy things can happen, you know. It's nice if you can have a plan, especially, you know, like I started in real estate before I was 20, you know. So if you can have a plan to where and my broker was a young progressive guy. He was in his, I think he was like in his late 30s when I started in real estate, and he hired me. And I can tell you that his name was Joe Almeida. And I can tell you that he gave me some really good ideas to be successful. You know, like the one thing he said to me is, Mike, don't focus on the money, focus on the service. If you focus on the service, the money will follow. And you don't even know how many times that has made a world of difference for me in anything I've done in life that's involved my business, in any businesses I've been involved with. People can tell when it's all about the money. People can smell it, you know. It's crazy. If you focus on high quality service, the money will come. You don't need to worry about it. I promise you that. It's really true. It's always happened like that for me. I would encourage you to adopt that as a philosophy of life. Okay? You have to be available when people are available. So normally what you do during the day, during the weekdays, is you're keeping your deals together. You know, a lot of people think that your hard work in real estate starts when that your work in real estate starts once you sell a house. Like getting a house sold is one step, but keeping the deal together is actually the harder part, because now you got all these different people involved that you're trying to keep the deal going. You know, you got to make sure the lawyer does their thing, and the appraiser does their thing, and home inspector does their thing. You got to make sure that the other real estate agents doing what they have to do. You know, that's all. Like you'll hear me say periodically, and if not on the video segments that we've sent you before, we're like the master of ceremonies. You know, so you can definitely do it part-time. You just have to be really, really organized, and you need to associate with a real estate firm that's okay with you being part-time, because some companies are very anti-part-time. They really want you full-time. They don't want to invest training time into someone who's not committed to full-time. But it's, you know, there's lots of companies that will take you part-time, and there's lots of companies that won't. So that's why you have to interview, and you need to be honest and upfront. You need to let them know what your time commitment is, you know. And I can't tell you what, like, to be honest, you almost have to give every weekend for the first year or two. You almost have to give every weekend. Weekends are really important. If you can't give up weekends, it's really hard. It's really hard to do real estate, because that's when buyers are out there and ready and rearing to go, you know. Anyways, as we continue on page 211, we talk about some suggestions for you, some suggestions as far as getting bids for a project. You know, you should get at least 3 bids for a big project. We continue on page 212, and we talk about calling a number of vendors to get the best price and terms. You're not going to be tested on these items. Give it a cursory review. We talk about budget preparation for review procedures. That continues. I do want you to know the term capital improvement, though. Capital improvement in the middle of page 212. Please know what a capital improvement is. This is a testable item. Generally, capital improvements are items that add value to a property or investment and prolongs its life. So your trigger word, if you're making up flashcards, ladies and gentlemen, you want to make sure that for capital improvement, the word prolong is in your flashcard. You can't ask this question at the state level without the word prolongs, okay? Prolongs its life. And an example would be putting a new porch on, okay? That's a capital improvement. Fixing a step is a repair. It's a big difference. You know, when you replace the roof or you fix a hole, big difference, okay? So capital improvements. And the reason why the capital improvements, you know how I always, like I talk about the circle of life in real estate, and it's not a Disney thing that I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is the fact that it's how do we connect the dots so that everything makes sense? Do you remember the other night when we learned about recapture? And then tonight we had like the little quiz where, 27 and a half is the depreciation period for residential, and 39 is a depreciation for commercial. Well, it turns out that property people can live in, then we have 27 and a half years. If it's commercial, where you can't live in the property, then we follow the 39-year rule, okay? So if you have a new roof going on a commercial property, like an office building, well, then you don't have to worry about this, but this is like just showing you the connection here. If it's a capital improvement, you can't deduct the cost of that new roof for that office building that you own. You have to capitalize it. So you take the cost of that roof, you capitalize it over whatever the number of years you're allowed to capitalize it for. It's not going to be 39 because the whole building is 39. So it's going to be a number less than that. It'll probably be like 10 or 12 years. So then you would add that to the amount that you could deduct off your income each year. That's why we talk about capital improvement. So we do capital improvements compared to repairs. If we could count everything as a repair, that would even be better. Why do you think it's better? Just so I know you're paying attention. There's 14 of us here. Why do you think it's better if that roof could be treated as a repair? Just so I kind of get a feel if you're getting this or not. Type out your response now. It's because if it was because one of the benefits of owning real estate that's income real estate is that if you've made improvements to it, well, if it's capital improvements, we have to capitalize the improvements, which means spread out the cost over X number of years. But if you make repairs, you get to deduct that immediately. So if we could deduct the cost of that roof immediately, we would get whatever the cost of that roof was immediately comes off the income that we had on that property for that tax year. So if that roof was $22,000 and the cash flow of that property was $20,000, then you'd have negative $2,000. You'd actually have what we call a carryover to the next year. And I think you can have, I think it's $3,000 a year you can have as a carryover to the next year, but you can't do more than $3,000. So if you have like a $10,000 loss, tax loss, then you can carry it over until you finally use up all of your tax loss, even if it takes you X number of years. Does that make sense? I think it looks like you're getting it. I think you're getting it. So please know the definition of a capital improvement. That has shown up on the state exam. That's also a favorite, excellent. That's also a favorite state exam question for the broker exam, if you ever take the broker exam. Okay, the bottom of 212, we talk about marketing the investment project. That's, it's good information, good stuff to know. Page 213 is next. We talk about the details of your marketing plan. This information is presented to you in such a way so that you know how to present yourself in the best light to the landlord that you're going to be working for. That's why you see it this way. So it's not just a matter of, okay, this is what I ought to know to pass the state exam. It's also like, hey, if I'm ever going to work as a property manager, I want to make sure that I know these things. I used to be this, there was a national designation called RAM, Registered in Apartment Management. It was a designation, it's still around, but nobody really talks about it. They always try to compete with this thing called a CPM, Certified Property Manager. That's the preeminent designation that people get in property management. And in some parts of the country, you can't get a job in property management at a professional place unless you have a CPM designation. There's a couple other ones. I just don't remember what the other ones are right now. But I know CPM, that you kind of walk on water if you have a CPM designation. But I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of money. Like if you look at everything you can do in real estate, right from the bottom up, from development, ownership of a company, real estate, selling real estate in the middle, appraisal, home inspection. You look at everything in the whole spectrum of real estate. I regret to tell you, the property management is way, way down at the bottom of the list. Like and the reason why is because it's all supply and demand. There's so many people in it, and it keeps the numbers down, and it's not hard to get involved in property management. So that's kind of the reason why. So that's why, it always kind of made me laugh a little bit inside when I would look at some of these programs out there, and I'm like, who would spend $4,000 to take some of these designation courses to learn the things that they could learn on their own or learn at a community college if they had the coursework? It just kind of blew my mind, the some of the things out there that people would waste money on, but they didn't even know any better. But anyways, that's another topic. So read through page 213. We talk about property maintenance things to consider. I want to look a little bit at 213 at the bottom, where we talk about some of the laws that affect the property manager and the management industry. So Buffalo, New York City, they're affected by what we call multiple dwelling laws. Now, don't forget, we have MDL from yesterday, right? Multiple dwelling laws. And what's MRL? Remember the other one? Remember from yesterday? Tell me if you remember what that was. Because it was affected by the number of people in the population. It was the number of people in that municipality. Look at your notes and tell me if you can find that. Okay, so which one is which, Gino? Which one is which? And what's that other acronym we want to know? They both start with an M. MRL applies to municipalities that have less than 325,000 people, okay? The multiple dwelling laws apply to more than 325, okay? So that's well said. Now, the state hasn't been asking that question too much. They kind of implied that they would, but every time we talk to people, they never seem to see that on there. So, take it for what it's worth. But yeah. So as we continue, page 214, we talk about other laws and regulations you want to know. The heat that must be provided. That's at the top of page 214. Heat must be provided between the months of October and May. A lot of people kind of know that because it's put out regularly, especially when you get your national fuel gas or NYSEG bills. That information is kind of put out there too. If you have secure mailboxes, they must be provided by landlords to tenants in buildings that have 3 or more building units. It's a really good review, especially since a number of you have some rental property. You want to make sure that you're following these rules, okay? And of course, everything with Federal Fair Housing Act, you want to make sure all of that's followed. And there's sexual orientation. There's those. One of the big things is your source of income. That's really big. You're asking people questions about, are you collecting income from public services? You can't ask people if they get money from welfare. Like, you just can't ask that question. You can't ask people if they've ever been evicted before. Like the new laws that we covered under hot off the press, that's such a big no-no. You just can't do that. We've uploaded a new video with all of the hot off the press that covers all the changes. So you definitely want to take a look at that one if you haven't seen that yet. And if you're newer here, then you could say that was a very emotional evening for me. It was very sad to share all that bad news with you. Lots of law changes that took place that affects people in this chapter in July of 2019, actually. The bottom of 214, we talk about the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act. That was all lots of big stuff. The ADA stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it covers physical or mental impairments. And it also covers a record of having such an impairment or being regarded as having such an impairment, whether or not such an impairment actually exists. It's kind of interesting. As you read through this, it's almost a play on words, but it's not. So kind of read it carefully. See if you see what I'm talking about there. We talk about real estate offices also in the next paragraph, second from the bottom of page 214. We talk about real estate offices are considered what they call public accommodations, because we meet people. It's even in this day and age, we still do meet people at real estate offices. And there's something to be said about meeting people at real estate offices. It makes it more real. It's something real estate can be very casual and everything. And sometimes people just get so, it's just such a casual thing that, you want people to take it serious at some point, and the seriousness is when all of a sudden you're sitting down at the office, all of a sudden you're not wearing, jeans and a t-shirt. You're maybe you're actually in a sport coat and in a tie, and maybe, you got legal paperwork and this is for real. We're making an offer on a property. The biggest asset you will ever own, we're going to be negotiating this evening. This is not like a car, this is a big deal. I don't have a problem with people taking this serious, because this is serious, So having people meet at your office, even though everyone's, getting used to this whole concept of, working from home and, we're a very mobile society. No, there's something important to be said about, and it's even good for you, because this way, if people never want to meet with you at your office, it lets you know how serious they are as well. Just something to think about. Page 215 is next. Page 215 is where we begin the chapter end questions. So what this means to you is that we have concluded the material for the evening, because otherwise, if you do have any other questions, we have we're the only school in the country, I would actually tell you in the world, but I can't verify that, but I would almost say, Donald Trump does it, so I'm going to do it. We're the only school in the world that has a 7-day-a-week text line that you can text, and you'll probably get an answer. I can't say 24 hours a day, but probably 7 days a week.